Fine, of course, Of course.
Whenever this, I'm flicking the channels at home after a few drinks and this comes up, I just think, why doesn't my character have any balls? Hello, I'm Hugh Grant, and I regret to say we're now going to go through some scenes from my career. Right, here they are.
Does Natalie live here?
No.
Right, fine. Thank you. Sorry to disturb.
Yeah, aren't you the Prime Minister?
Yes. In fact, I am. Merry Christmas.
Richard only wrote Four Weddings and a Funeral and Notting Hill. Other people directed them. And then, like a lot of writers I've come across, although he admired the directors he'd worked with, he was dying to do it himself. And we all dreaded it and thought he won't be able to do it. But actually, I watched this the other day, and I think he's a brilliant director, much more cinematic, great visuals. Hats off to him. Again, you watch these things, and a lot of it's utterly preposterous. So, of course, the Prime Minister would have some civil servant who could find out exactly where she lived on this street, as many people have pointed out. But it doesn't matter. It's you ride the wave of a sort of charm of the whole thing.
Ah, hello. Does Natalie live here?
No, she doesn't.
Oh, dear. Okay.
Are you singing carols?
No, I'm not.
I think it was all in one night. I think we had to move along because they open in different ways. They're semi-detached houses or something like that. I'm sure we moved along. I look awfully tired. I think I'd just come in from shooting 2 weeks' notice in New York. And I seem to remember being exhausted here.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
This is my mum and my dad and my Uncle Tony and my Auntie Glyn.
Very nice to meet you.
And, this is the Prime Minister.
Yes, we can see that, darling.
My wife pointed this out the other day. She loves it, and she says it's about pain, the pain of love. And actually, all these stories are based on pain. Even the little boy is in pain, and I'm in pain, and Laura Linney's in pain because her brother is, in a very difficult situation in hospital. And it's all about pain, and then the best kind of British humour dealing with pain. And I think when humour in a film is solving something or a means of coping, I think it's trebly enjoyable.
Can I just say no to your kind request and leave it at that?
Yes. Fine, of course, Of course.
Probably all the time with Julia, as with any brilliant actress, you're just thinking, oh, Christ, they're really good. I'm not going to be as good as her. And she is great at emoting, and she's got that kind of quality where it looks like her skin is wafer thin. You can sort of see her soul. Whenever this, I'm flicking the channels at home after a few drinks and this comes up, I just think, why doesn't my character have any balls? There's a scene in this film where she's in my house and the Paps come to the front door and ring the bell, and I think I just let her go past me and open the door, and that's awful. And I've never had a girlfriend, or indeed now wife, who hasn't said, why the hell didn't you stop it? What's wrong with you? And I don't really have an answer to that. It was how it was written, and I think he's despicable, really.
I should have done this years ago.
Done what?
This. Oh, fuck me, that hurt. Oh.
What the fuck do you think you're doing?
This. Oh, Christ, not again. Oh.
The big fight was to stop stuntmen getting involved, because they always want to come in and say, and choreograph the whole thing and say, mate, it'd be great if, you swing a right hook and his head will go back. And I just thought, in action films, cowboy films, whatever, that's great. But this is two middle-class Englishmen, and they don't fight like that. I've seen them fight, and it's shit. So we managed to ban the stuntman. I think the last thing he contributed was probably the dustbin lid. And after that, it's just me and Colin messing about. Colin's very weak. He's virtually a piece of shellfish. So that wasn't really a problem. We were kind to each other. On the next film, we had another of these fights. And we'd got older, and we both put our backs out. And a chiropractor had to be summoned to the set.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh, God, I'm sorry.
He doesn't grow at all, as I recall, between this one and the next one. But the one we've just made, he's considerably older, 24 years older or something. And I did worry that, the same, hello, nice little skirt, Jones, is great, but it's borderline tragic for a man in his early 60s. So we invented a whole sort of interim story in which he's did get together with some woman, and he did have a kid, and then they're estranged, of course, because he shags her sister, and he hasn't seen his son for 10 years. And it just made him a bit more... I think if he'd just been walking up and down the King's Road, chatting up girls for 24 years, it would have been hard to endure him.
Rain, rain, don't go away, fill up the sky. We'll stay cozy and dry.
Well, I do love this film. I just got a very unsettling letter with the script from Paul King saying, look, we're making Paddington 2, and this time the bad guy in it is a washed-up old actor who's incredibly vain and no one really likes, and we thought of you. And I got over that hump.
Listen to the lovely rain.
I went to a converted Victorian bathhouse, Fulham Broadway, and two charming choreographers worked and worked and worked at me. And I used to say to them, any better today? And they were very frank. They'd say, no, maybe worse. It got good enough by the end. And really, I'm kept alive by all these other fantastic proper dancers. And we had a fantastic choreographer, slightly camp chap. You'd never guess from the choreography, but he's a bit camp.
Well, it seems I didn't need the West End after all. Just a captive audience. What am I like? Guards, lock me up!
Even though it's a kid's film and a sequel, and perhaps you would expect it doesn't need too much thought, I always now put in vast amounts of thought and anxiety. And I had a whole vast backstory for Phoenix. I can tell you why he's called Phoenix. It's because he was conceived in the Phoenix Theatre on St. Martin's Lane by his mother, who was in love with a famous actor who was married and was shagging her on the side, and then she produced Phoenix. He grew up as a sort of mummy's boy, and she shoved him into theatre school and and over-mothered him. I think that's why he's rather lonely and has never had a good relationship, and is a complicated character and very, very self-entitled and vain. So even though it's all madness and silliness, I did try to make him 3D. No actor, I don't think, including myself, really ever wants to play the charming lead. They're very difficult because if you're not careful, they go wet or sort of just slightly unappealing. When people perform Romeo and Juliet, no one wants to play Romeo. They want to play Mercutio or Tybalt, more complex or dangerous characters. And it's always been the same. And audiences, for some reason, are always drawn to the baddie, which is a fascinating thing. Why are they? And it must mean that we are fundamentally evil as human beings. The antagonist, the bad guy, represents the real truth of the human experience.
Except I did not have a relationship with Norman Scott.
Jeremy, I kept you off the witness stand to save your life. The prosecution had evidence. They had men from the pubs, men from the streets, men who know you.
All of them liars.
He was of an era when men couldn't, or Englishmen of that class and that background, couldn't possibly admit that they were gay. Even in this scene, he's sticking to that. He's saying, all those those witnesses were liars, and he frames this whole explanation of, one can only speculate that this might be the case, and he still can't quite let go. And I remember thinking that very final look to my barrister here, Norman Scott. I mean, one might say that Norman Scott was the best. Yes. I remember thinking this should be maybe one of the very few glimpses of the real quivering jelly in the soul of Jeremy Thorpe, how much he's suffered from having been so repressed. Although I couldn't admit this either, or Jeremy couldn't admit this, I loved Norman. It was a love affair. It was a thwarted love affair. And so I tried to be a bit vulnerable in this particular close-up.
Given those men, it may be, I suppose, one could imagine, that Norman Scott was the best.
It's quite tragic for the poor old boy. You know, he gets off on this charge of trying to murder Norman Scott, his ex-lover. But as his mother whispers in his ear, you're ruined, because the scandal won't go away. And he never, after that moment, could go back into politics, and he'd had this glittering career up till then. And so it's sort of the end for him. The whole edifice is collapsing around him. He's there on YouTube, you know, from interviews or whatever he was doing, TV shows in the 50s, 60s. I realized I could do a pretty good imitation of him. I'm quite good at imitations. And then I was scared because I thought, well, this has to be a lot more than just an imitation. Sort of took a huge Jeremy Thorpe bath, and I knew everything about him. I read every book about him. I met lots of people who'd known him as friends and as colleagues. I became slightly sort of obsessed with him. But there were certain odd keys, as there often are when you're trying to find a character. Jeremy Thorpe wore a particular kind of hat, and I was in a costume fitting, and it didn't look right, and none of the hats were right, even though they looked similar to this famous hat he wore. And then I just put it at a rakish angle, slightly on the back of the head, and there was Jeremy Thorpe. And that was more than just important in terms of hats. It was important, I see, yes, rakish, a bit of a chancer, bit of a gambler. He certainly was. He lived a very, very risky life. Getting dressed every morning for this character in these, he had very specific three-piece suits with a waistcoat and an absurd watch chain that no one had worn for decades. And this became quite a ritual every morning of getting dressed like that and putting on he wore a special ring and the chain and everything, and then there he was. But it's also a lot of makeup. I worked with a genius makeup team who created a look, if you know this real character, is pretty damn good. What was that song you used to sing when you were little? How did, with my hands on myself, that one. What have we here? These are my eye peepers, nothing to fear. Eye peepers, brain box, and wibbly wobbly woos. That's what they taught me when I went to school.
You'll never hurt me.
Really? Are you sure? Did that hurt, darling? Did it? Did that fucking hurt?
With my hands on my... Well, it's a great piece of cutting there by Susanna Bier. It's wonderful. This was my idea, wibbly wobbly woos and with my hands on myself. It was a song that I used to sing with my cousins in the car. So well done me, because I think it's quite good, especially in contrast to smashing that poor girl's head against the wall. I remember dreading this scene. I remember thinking this is really, really difficult when it was on paper, that he's kind of breaking up and I thought, well, I may not be able to do this. And I did have a long panic about it, a long, long, long panic, sitting in my house in France, scribbling notes. And I don't think I ever planned my voice would crack. What I did do in this scene and in other scenes, when the real Jonathan made brief appearances, was I remember my eyes slightly defocused. I did something with my eyes where they don't quite see properly, just for a moment or two. That was my way of suddenly being the real Jonathan. And throughout, I had it in my script, I always have zillions of notes in my script, and they were, in this case, they all were under two sections. There was always RJ for real Jonathan and FJ or something for fake Jonathan, which was most of him. It was mostly fake. He's this wonderful child cancer doctor who's just great and charming and lovely. And then just occasionally the real guy would poke through. That's what they taught me when I went to school.
You'll never leave me. You'll never.
It seems to me that that's how we all operate. There's always a sad jelly somewhere inside us. There's some psychosis, some hurt, something. And behavior is the layers we wrap around it to protect that jelly. American actors traditionally have gone on about emotion. I need to emote. Well, yeah, but most of the time that's hidden. We try to hide our emotions or pretend we're actually feeling something else. So there's very few moments, I think, in life when naked emotion comes through. It does, but it's rare, and especially if you're British. Yeah, I do suit some of these quite British characters who are incredibly defended and have layer upon layer of shell around them.
As I got closer to God through genre and rigorous study, as I worked on my personal relationship with Heavenly Father, and I think strengthened it. Do you know what I found? The more you know, the less you know.
I went through this process I have of going through the script with a very, very fine tooth comb and asking myself, why does he say this? Why does he do that? Every tiny moment, why? And sometimes the answers to those questions open a whole avenue of possibilities about what might have been his history, things that might have happened to him to make him who he is. And I typed them all into a computer, and the thing gets bigger and bigger and mushrooms into this huge biography. And whether or not that actually helps, I don't know. I think it does. But I know that it helps my nerves. If I do several hours of this work every day for weeks, even months before the filming, I feel a bit less tense.
And by the time I was 50, I was malnourished from the fast food of religion I'd been packing into my brain for the best part of a decade. Every sect, cult, creed, and denomination all claimed to be the one true doctrine, and yet none seemed true when held under the microscope.
I think the big debate for me in this scene was how much of what he's saying here he means. Did he ever have a wrestle with faith? Or how much is just dicking with them and beginning to unsettle them, which is something that he's addicted to doing with women, unsettling them, disorientating them, exerting control over them, and then, well, I shan't spoil the film.
So I wondered what else was out there. I promise you, the last thing I wanted to do was find the one true religion. But unfortunately, I did.
In a close-up like this one, as it pushes in on my face, I'm sure I did various versions in different takes where the creepometer was dialed up or down, because I needed to give the directors options in the edit. I felt that he was probably one of these guys, or one of these people, who sadly, despite incredible intellectual powers, he's a very bright man, just finds it hard to have friends and close relationships with people. They slightly recoil from him. And I always felt that this was a source of great sadness to him. I've witnessed people I know and quite love who are like that and who compensate by trying to be fun. They try to be fun. They try to be pranksters, jokers, and they think this is going to make them popular, and actually it just makes them more and more creepy. But he's quite good at these things. So to begin with, it's plausible, and the girls come into the house, and it's only gradually that they realize there's something very, very wrong here. There's two things I think you absolutely have to have. One is to understand their inner pain, because everything's compensation. I think all behavior is sort of compensation for some kind of suffering. And if you've got that, then the audience will be very interested. It's not just a character, a baddie. It's a human, and it's very much more watchable. Secondly, and it's sort of part of the same thing in a way, is that I've got to either like them or enjoy them. I liked being him. I certainly enjoyed being him. I'm surprised I said that. But in a way, I think you have to. That's enough of that. It was very nice of you if you did watch any of this. I appreciate it. Bye.